It was time for the NBA playoffs, and we were taking on the 76ers in the first round, who were led by their star small forward Andre Iguodala. Can we pull off a series victory over Philadelphia? Let's find out. Game 1 was here at home in Milwaukee since we were the 4th seed in the playoffs, and that meant we would at least have home court advantage in this first round. We were going to need it too because this 76ers team was a tough matchup for us. They were showing us why as well, as Andre Iguodala would put them up by 9 early on, but we would finally start getting some buckets going our way with this lob to Bogut from Jennings. That would be the last bit of offense our team saw though in the first quarter, as the 76ers would score on the fast break to extend their lead to 7 headed into the second. It wouldn't take long for us to bring it down to a 1-point lead, as Dante Wooden would hit our first 3-pointer of the night, and he would follow it up with this tough contested layup along the baseline to tie it up next possession. Our team had done a good job of fighting back into this game and would take our first lead on this fast break play. Carlos Delfino would tack on one more 3-pointer for us to extend the lead just a bit, but Andre Iguodala would get one last bucket for his team before halftime, and it was now only a 2-point game headed into half. We wanted to set the tone in the second half, and even though he missed his first shot, Andrew Bogut would get an offensive rebound and score on second chance points, and we were hoping that would spark some more big plays for us on offense, such as shots like this. We finally got our lead back up to 5 points, which has been the largest lead we've had at any point in this game, and by the end of the third quarter, we would end up extending it to an 8-point lead over the 76ers. We were now 1 quarter away from winning our first playoff game this series, but Philadelphia wasn't going to make it easy for us tonight in the fourth quarter. Andre Iguodala would get it down to just a 1-point game for the Sixers, but with less than 20 seconds left, they would make the mistake of leaving the lane wide open for Brandon Jennings on the fast break. Then all we needed to do was knock down our free throws at the stripe, and we would walk away with a Game 1 victory over the Sixers as we look to take a 2-0 series lead over them next game. We were back at home for Game 2 of the series, and it was a slow start for both teams as it took over a minute for anyone to score the first bucket of the night. Thankfully, we seemed to break out of the slump, but the Sixers had still not scored a single basket yet, as Chauncey Billups would finally get their first bucket to go with just under 2 minutes left in the first. That seemed to kickstart their offense as they would come back and tie it up before the end of the first, and we would head into the second quarter tied at 11 apiece now. For the first time tonight, Philadelphia would finally take the lead over us with this layup, and the momentum had really seemed to swing their way after this 3-pointer. Not only had we not been able to make any of our shots now, but the Sixers were hitting all of their shots, and were now up by double digits over us in the second quarter. This game was not going the way we thought it would throughout the first, as we were now down by 8 headed into halftime. We needed to come out and try to close this gap in the third quarter, and we would get to work right away by scoring the first 5 points of the half, but that wouldn't help because we would let Philly get their lead up to 9 points eventually. Slowly but surely, we were still closing in, and rookie Dante Wooden would make it a 2-point game with his 3-pointer, and he would step up again with his clutch shot to finally give us the lead headed into the fourth. Philadelphia though would waste no time and would take it right back with a 3 of their own, and it looked like we were going to have a game that came down to the final few possessions tonight. With just under 2.5 minutes to go, we would increase our lead to 4 over the Sixers, but Andrew Bogut decided why not make it a 6-point lead for us with this slam. With the way Philly could shoot though, we knew this game wasn't over for us yet, as Andre Iguodala would bully his way into the lane and get the and-one basket to fall, and would make it a 1-point game with his free throw. We would try to run the clock out as low as possible, but Brandon Jennings would end up turning the ball over, and Philly had a chance to win it here as Billups would drive the lane and kick it to Iggy, but his contested layup would miss the mark. But instead of running the clock out, Brandon Jennings would score a bucket, leaving Philly 3 seconds left, so naturally that mistake would cost us as we were headed into overtime in Game 2 now. The Sixers would score the first basket of overtime tonight, and even though they had all the momentum, we were still keeping it a contested game. But with less than a minute to go, they would hit a huge 3-pointer right in front of our bench, and after another turnover from Brandon Jennings in clutch time when we needed a basket, that would pretty much seal the game for the 76ers tonight, as they would tie the series up at 1 apiece, and we would be headed on the road to Philadelphia for Game 3. This was an important game for us tonight because we did not want to fall behind in this series. It would be a tough test though because it is never easy to win on the road in Philly. Just like last game, we would get off to a hot start taking an early 6-0 lead over the Sixers, but they would fight their way back into this throughout the rest of the first quarter tonight. Even though our lead was small, we were doing a good job of not giving it up so far tonight, but I don't know how much longer that would last us this game, as Philadelphia had managed to bring it down to only a 1-point game now in the second. The tides would finally turn for them as they would take their first lead of the night over us, and while it was still close, they were slowly starting to try and build their lead before halftime, but Dante Wooden would get us one last bucket before the buzzer, and we would only be down by by 2 at halftime. That would allow us to come out on our very first possession and tie it up at 29 apiece, but that didn't seem to last very long for us at all. Philly was starting to go on an offensive run here nearing the end of the third quarter, as Elton Brand would extend it to a 6-point lead for the Sixers headed into the fourth. Thankfully, this lead was still small enough that we could fight our way back to win this game tonight, but no matter what we did on offense, we just couldn't slow down the Sixers on offense this quarter. With less than 30 seconds to go, this shot would make it a 9-point game, and we would unfortunately drop the series lead to Philadelphia tonight as we got ready for another road game down 2-1. We needed to win this game tonight in Philadelphia because we could not go down 3-1 in this series against the Sixers, and if we've learned anything so far this series, it's that Philadelphia is an extremely tough team to get a win against. We were trading leads back and forth with them throughout the entire first quarter, and one last bucket would send us to the second quarter up by 3. It finally looked like we were starting to get some momentum shifting our way in the second, but Philly would fight their way back into it and make it only a 2-point lead for us. We would still hold on to our lead though, mostly due to the duo of Andrew Bogut and Brandon Jennings, as out of our 32 points at halftime, Andrew Bogut had 13 of them for us. And he was going right to work to start the second half for us as well too. The 76ers were so worried about stopping him in the paint that it was finally opening up the 3-point shot for us now. But despite all that, Philly still managed to keep themselves in this game headed into the fourth, where Chauncey Billups would finally tie it up for the 76ers with a 3-pointer. It would stay tied until the very last possession of the game, where once again, Philadelphia would hit a buzzer beater to send us into overtime, and just like in regulation, both teams were going back and forth with the lead. We had less than 15 seconds to try and take the lead, and rookie Dante Wooden would step up big time with this go-ahead shot in the clutch for us, and all the 76ers could do would be to chuck up a last-second prayer shot that would be no good, as we had tied the series back up at 2 apiece and were headed back home for Game 5. The series was tied 2-2, and we could take the lead here at home in Milwaukee, and so far it was shaping up to be another closely contested game between us and Philadelphia. The Sixers would extend their lead to 6 points over us in the second quarter, and it would pretty much stay there as we would get it down to only a 4-point deficit before halftime, as we would head into the locker room trailing by 4. It had been an extremely defensive third quarter, but Brandon Jennings would finally tie it up for us, but Philly would get it right back to a 4-point lead for them headed into the final quarter of play. With just under 3 minutes to go, Kyle Korver would give us our first lead of the entire night, and then Andrew Bogut would show off his mid-range shot to now put us up by 4. Philly would manage to take the lead though with less than 20 seconds to go in the game, but Brandon Jennings would drive the lane and would give us the lead with 6 seconds left on the clock. As this time, the Sixers weren't able to hit a last-second shot on us to force overtime, and we would take a 3-2 series lead over them with this win, with a chance to eliminate the Sixers on their home court next game. We could win our first playoff series this game, as we were in Philly with a 3-2 lead in the series, and we would jump out to a quick 7-point lead over the Sixers in the first quarter tonight, which would eventually extend to double digits for us in the second quarter. But as we had found out throughout the first round, there is no such thing as a safe lead against this team. Thankfully, our rookie Dante Wooden would get us one last bucket before halftime, and we would head into the second half with a 5-point lead. We would get our lead back up to 9 points though at one point in the third quarter, but Philadelphia had other plans for us headed into the fourth quarter tonight. They did not want to be eliminated tonight, as they would finally take the lead back from us, and their lead was starting to grow now too, and we were getting a bit concerned. With just 15 seconds left in the game, Lonnie Roberts would cut their lead down to 2, and we would go right back to the rookie again, who would tie the game up for us with a 3. It would come down to the last shot again, just like so many of these games have, and this time Philly would knock it down to win the game, as their playoff hopes would stay alive by forcing a Game 7 here in round 1. It was a win or go home game tonight, as this first round series was tied up at 3 apiece, and our team seemed to kick it into high gear tonight as we played one of our best first quarters all season long. We were up by double digits over the 76ers at the start of the second quarter, but once again we have seen that no lead is safe against this team throughout the series. So we couldn't get too comfortable and let our foot off the gas pedal at all tonight, even with an 11-point lead at halftime. The Sixers still seemed to be struggling on offense in the third quarter, and it was really surprising to me. I thought for sure that this game would have been a lot closer at this point in the night, but I'm not going to complain about an 18-point lead headed into the fourth quarter. After going down by 21 points to us, the writing was on the wall for this Sixers team. Even though they wouldn't give up fighting, our lead was just too much for them to come back from, as we would secure the Game 7 win here at home and would be taking on the first-seeded Boston Celtics in the second round next episode.